Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Adam Mathews with Mathews Counseling, and all this month of October, we are talking about how to fight well particularly in our romantic relationships. And Michelle Thomisee is with us, and she's one of our awesome therapists at Mathews Counseling, and she's written this month about how to have good conflict in your relationship. Michelle, when we get into relationships, right, nobody really teaches us how to fight well, do they?
Exactly. Yeah. This stuff is not taught in school. It's like,
Yeah,
we are only learning about like the Pythagorean theorem and all these different
yeah,
equations. Like, how often are you
that's right.
using that unless you're an engineer? But, you know, not typically using
Yeah,
that stuff. So it's,
yeah, we don't use the Pythagorean theorem to decide to resolve our argument about who's loading the
exactly.
dishwasher wrong, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that I think is a challenge too, is that when we get into a committed romantic relationship, oftentimes we think that it should be conflict free, right? And we know that's not necessarily true, right? Like, how do you think about or talk to couples about the idea of conflict, right, in their relationship? Because so many people will say, like, oh, we don't want to have it, we don't want to fight, we don't want to argue.
Hmm.
That's a
Hmm.
definite, and that's definition of successful relationship, but it's not really, is it?
No, yeah. Healthy couples, are going to have conflict. Things are going to arise, things are going to come up, but we want to navigate in a healthy way without
Yeah.
ignoring people or without stonewalling, without sweeping
Yes.
things under the rug, because then resentment can
Yeah.
build.
And they'll come to us and they'll say, "Oh, we're not communicating well." And what they really mean oftentimes is that our conflict is not leading to any kind of resolution,
Right.
because healthy conflict, right, when you do it well, it
Mm.
actually builds intimacy
Yeah,
rather than separations. Like, and so we want people to engage well, right?
right. Absolutely. We want it to be us against the issue, not us against, each other. So,
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that I talk to I the us against the issue piece, right,
mhm.
is like, 'cause we talk about we're not nobody we don't want and who's going to win the argument. I think there's a lot of stuff in pop culture, right, that says
Mhm.
who won the argument, how do
Yeah,
you win the argument. That's not,
no,
no, it's win. We want it to be a win, not a win lose.
really. Yep.
Because if one person loses in the relationship, in the argument, right, then your relationship is losing.
Right. You
Yeah.
both lose then at that point. So,
Okay, so cool. So you created this acronym that I think is super helpful for folks to really kind of think through some ways to fight well. So tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, so I came up with the acronym of home because, we want to have like a safe space for, coming together
Yeah.
with issues. So, everybody feels most comfortable typically at home. You got, your
Yeah.
coffee and your bed and, all the things, your Netflix, whatnot. The first, letter obviously is H, and that stands for
Okay.
staying in the here and now. So a lot of
Oh.
times we want to bring up every issue under the sun from the beginning of the relationship. And that is just not helpful. So we want to really
Yeah.
stay present as possible with each.
Yes, and I mean, I agree. I think I see that with couples all the time, is like when they start to talk about a something that came up in today, they're also bringing all the past stuff into it. That's where they start saying, "You always, you
Mhm.
never, what about this time?"
Yeah.
Right? And
Mhm.
as opposed to focusing on what is happening right here in the present
Mhm.
moment, right?
Right.
That's so key,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
How would you tell somebody, how did we do that when this thing that happens reminds us of this past event? Like, what's the thing that keeps us focused on, or at least how do we talk about it? Maybe I
Yeah.
don't know. What
So
do you think?
really
How
just
do we do that?
yeah, absolutely. Just acknowledging, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm kind of like wanting to bring up everything in the past, and just even acknowledging that with yourself or with your partner and committing to staying as present as possible. And we're going to put the past on pause. We're going to stick to the here and now. Let's,
Yeah,
really agree to that as much as possible. And, we're going to slip up, it's a new skill to learn. So we want to give ourselves
yeah,
grace, we give our partners grace. We don't want to start
yeah.
arguing over the acronym either. So,
That's that's exactly right. We don't want to start going arguing about that. But I also think I love that, because like that, we're gonna mess that up. But like being able to recognize when I'm
mhm,
bringing in the past, and it because it sounds like something that would be super easy to do. But I love what you're saying there. Like, it's
mhm,
staying present and staying focused on the issue at
mhm,
hand is a challenge, and it's something that we have to learn.
right.
So okay, so H is here and now. What's
Yep.
the O?
The O stands for one topic at a time. So we really want to just address one issue. So even starting off the conversation, we can be like, this conversation is going to be to address this issue. And we might want to pull in, lots of different issues. Excuse me, but sometimes we don't have the emotional bandwidth to talk about like
Absolutely.
5 issues. So, we want to come to an agreement on what topic we're discussing or
Yeah.
arguing
Well, and
about.
that I love that one too, because that really helps us to think through, like, if I'm bringing an issue to my
Mhm.
partner, then may have a related issue,
Right.
right? But
Hmm.
that's not the time to talk about it. And so
Hmm.
that the it really helps to kind of ward off defensiveness, and it helps me to listen better, right? If my partner's bringing me an issue,
Hmm.
right, I can listen a lot better if I'm going, "Oh, we're just talking about this thing that's affecting them and
Hmm.
not my side of it or my part," like that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then really being
Yeah.
able to hear what your partner's saying as opposed to like thinking about what you're going to say next. So
Yeah.
that's helpful.
100%. Okay. What's the M?
Yep. So we want to monitor our feelings. So basically, when we're
Mm,
starting to feel ourselves get really triggered or upset, maybe we're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to explode and start screaming, like that's not going to be productive. So maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you need to get a glass of water. Maybe you need to take a walk around the block just to center yourself. And like,
mm,
absolutely, some issues are going to be really triggering and really intense, and that's okay. But we want to just
yes.
acknowledge, we want to work towards a healthy solution. So we really want to monitor where we're at, and even just letting our partner know, hey, I'm getting real triggered right now. Can you support me in
Yes.
taking a break? And let's schedule a time to come back when we're both calmer. So that can be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of times we think that fighting well means we have to resolve everything in a nice, neat bow
Yeah.
right in that moment. But there's feelings that are involved. And so, like, being
Yeah.
able to know myself well
Hmm.
enough to know, hey, I need to take a time out. We need to come
Yeah.
back to this later.
Right.
Really kind of helps prevent things from escalating. I think it's a great skill to learn how to take a break, and that's part of what that is, of being able to monitor
Yeah.
what's happening with me so we know when to take a break, right?
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
kind of referring to that emotional regulation that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
You want to use
Yeah.
fancy terms.
That's right. Well, when we're emotionally dysregulated, we can't resolve anything, right? When we
Exactly.
get, like, Gottman calls it the flooding effect. So, like, when we're
Mhm.
flooded, or when and that's, you said trigger, like when we're triggered, we typically get
Yeah.
flooded.
Mhm.
And that when we're in that state, we cannot really resolve conflict. It's not gonna be productive at that point, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Love it. E. What's the E
All
stand for?
right. This is my favorite. E stands for establishing conflict guidelines ahead of time. So
Love
when
it.
we're in a calm space, both of us, we can come together and kind of make an agreement for fighting well. So maybe that means we're not going to do name calling. We're not going to raise our voice to a certain level,
Mm,
whatever you feel comfortable coming up with, and, really making it a collaborative process and then agreeing to
mm,
those guidelines. And then when you're in the moment and you are fighting, if one of you is, not following the guidelines, it's okay to gently point out, oh, hey, wait a minute, we're not following the
yeah.
guidelines. Like maybe we need to
Yes.
address that in a kind
Yes.
way.
That's about to say, I love what you said, gently and kindly point out that we're not following the guidelines.
Right. And this
Yeah.
might be really hard to implement. That's okay. Again, it's a new skill. It'll take
Yeah.
practice and we'll get there. Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's so helpful, to even, I call it, sometimes call it the conversation about the conversation, right? Like,
Hmm.
having that, just having, and then I don't think you're talking either about, like, we're not talking about like some, like, page after page of rules. Like, no, what we're saying is,
Hmm.
this is how we want to have conflict. So even if you say, like,
Right.
oh, I had a client the other day that said, I don't want to fight past 10. Like, I'm too
Yeah.
tired. Like, it's too much. Like, so we're not gonna
Yeah.
have hard conversations past
Hmm.
10 p.m., right? Things like that, that just kind of say, hey, these are the things that help
Hmm.
us, that really support us in fighting well, right? Like,
Right.
even establishing something that says, hey, when we have to have a hard conversation, we're going to go out of our house, we're going to go have coffee
Mhm.
together, we're going to reward ourselves with
Yeah.
a sweet treat or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
even things like that, I
Yeah.
think, can take it, it just removes it from this realm of
Exactly.
explosive, like,
Hmm.
things that happen at the same
Yeah.
time,
And it
right?
makes it really respectful. Like me and my
Yeah.
partner, we like have one of our guidelines is we're not going to have an argument when you first walk in the door after work. Like we're going to allow
uh
each other to
Love it.
decompress, kind of get into, our
I love that.
rhythm and whatnot. And then we'll come together when we're
Mhm.
both more energized. It's
Yeah.
not goal.
I love that. And I think those are like having just those kind of things, even if it's just one, two, or three things,
Yeah.
like it's
Hmm.
gonna change the nature of the conflict. And I love what you say about it is respectful to
Hmm.
and it can just explode on you as soon as you come in the door, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna bring it up. Like
Mhm.
it also kind of lends itself to a much more gentle startup of
Yeah.
conflict,
Hmm.
which is really helpful, right?
Hmm.
And as opposed to me getting thrust into something
Right.
unexpectedly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I love that acronym, right? So just as a
Hmm.
review, here and now, right? One issue at a time,
Hmm.
monitor emotion, and then establish some guidelines
Yeah.
for the fight. Like, I love that so much. So when you think about this, Michelle, like what's the one thing that what's the one thing you want them to know about this idea that we've talked about today?
Yeah. So basically, like you are capable to fight well. You just need to practice, and I think that
Yeah,
because it takes time. So practice the acronym and you will get there. You'll have the foundation for a healthy argument with
yeah.
towards resolution.
I love that. Yeah, like it's about that process, not perfection,
Mhm.
right? So like we want
Exactly.
to move into it, even if it doesn't go exactly.
Right.
If you use that, and if the fight doesn't go well,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that the next one can't, right? Like it
Right.
means like you just have to kind of
Mhm.
continue to work on it and tweak it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
love
Yeah.
that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing
Yeah.
that. And if
You're
you're
welcome.
listening to this and you need help figuring out how to fight well, we have lots of excellent therapists like Michelle that have immediate openings that can help you figure out how to apply this to your specific relationships and how to really what we're talking about too is to move out of this place of resentment in our
Hmm.
relationship and not allowing it to build up so that we can move toward intimacy and connection. So
Hmm.
thank you so much. You can schedule an appointment or request an appointment on our website at Mathews Counseling .net and also read a lot of the bios of a lot of our amazing couples therapists as well. So till next time, thanks everybody.